your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Chrissie is hilarious.
Chrissie, have you ever heard of the comedian Basha K. Ali?
No, that sounds like something you yell out before you blow up a plane.
30 seconds remaining.
But you know what good you say? I doubt it will stand up to something. I have no disrespect for you at all.
I was very confused by the title, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's also what we call it when Ash takes off his shirt.
I shouldn't be up here. I should be in school on the other side of the ocean.
Ooh, what's up, boys and girls? Welcome to the Chrissie Mayr podcast. We are on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud. So if you're listening on iTunes right now, please leave a kind review. Happy November 1st. Happy Dia de los Muertos. So I'm wearing this shirt that I very much wanted to wear for Halloween, but it arrived late. So I'm wearing it today. I think I'm back on YouTube. I have feelings about that. I hope I am streaming to Rumble right now. I just got back from a weekend in Florida, so I had to slap together my setup and go live in time to get this guest on. So I'm very excited to bring her on, but first I'm going to very quickly go over some of my upcoming stand-up dates. This weekend I'll be in Long Island, Friday, November 4th and Saturday, November 5th. I'll be at the Brokerage Comedy Club in Belmore. That's in Long Island, Strong Island. The dogs are scratching at the door. They want to leave, but I won't let them. Then we got the Compound Media Censored TV show in New York City. That's going to be Thursday, November 10th. Venue to be announced the day of, because Antifa gonna Antifa. That's going to be with myself, Anthony Cumia, Josh Denny, Gavin McGinnis, a spicy crew. Then I'll be back in Jersey headlining at the New Brunswick Stress Factory on Thursday, November 17th. Then I got the weekend coming up in San Diego. Oh my God, this year's flying by. I'll be at the Mic Drop Comedy Club in San Diego, California, Friday, February 24th and Saturday, February 25th. So get your tickets at ChrissieMayr.com to see me where you live and make jokes and do comedy, which is a thing I like to do. I want to do a quick shout out to our sponsor for this episode. They were also our wonderful sponsor for this week's Content House. Ooh, I love this music. It's so inspiring. Guys, the recession is underway. Fuel is through the roof. Food prices are insane. And people have begun to lose their homes, but there's no reason to be scared because recessions are actually the easiest time to make money. Take the last recession, for example. Those who invested in property and stocks more than doubled their money inside of 2 years, but no market rose like crypto, where people made 10, 50, even 100 times over the same period. That's what James McMahon did, and he runs the Crypto with James YouTube channel. He's got over 22,000 subscribers. He told them all to invest in the same 26 coins that he did. Now, had you followed along and put $100 into each one, you'd be in profit for more than 123 grand at this point. His top pick of the year was a coin called Phantom, which went up a staggering 692 times. Remember, this is all public knowledge. You can go to YouTube and verify it for yourself. James will be sharing every coin he buys during this recession on his Copy My Crypto membership site. It's like having a big brother who knows what he's doing. You don't have to know anything about investing. You're just like in school when you look at someone's paper next to you. It's basically that, but for crypto. You can get started today. It's that easy. So to join the 2,800 members who copy James, go to copymycrypto.com/Mayor. That's copymycrypto.com/MAYR. Get yourself making some money on crypto. You're not too dumb. That's what I thought. I thought I'm too dumb to do this, but no, you just have to copy along. All right. Enough of that. I'm so excited to bring on this next guest because I think her and I have like so much in common. We have like so much in common. She was a television reporter for 12 years. I believe she was also a producer for Fox. she has much like myself, has a podcast on censorship where she brings on canceled, censored people and so forth. So I'm so excited to have her here with us today, joining the show. Alison Morrow, how are you?
I'm great. I'm just finished breastfeeding my newborn and I'm here for a good time. Not
Well,
that that wasn't a good time, but
I just finished breastfeeding my boyfriend, so I feel you.
God, it
Yeah, we
sucks when men never grow up, huh?
no, that's the inner child is forever alive, I guess, in some cases. We were talking before we went live about how YouTube has sort of wronged us both. I think this is my official first stream back on YouTube, but it feels kind of like going back to an ex who like broke up with you. You know, it was like, "Oh, I need some space." And you're like, "Over what? This was bullshit." It was like
Yeah, but
so
like more abusive, like he like
yeah.
also beat you and you're still back for more.
Yeah, it's like, "You threw me down a flight of stairs." They're like, "No, you threw yourself down."
Yeah, right, exactly. It is very similar actually. I agree. And the first time that I was suspended and successfully won my appeal, it was only because I went to Twitter like everybody does, and you get the mob to come after YouTube, and then eventually they back down because they see all these people that are angry at them. And it was kind of depressing that that was the way that I won because it sort of sets up its own kind of power game, oligarchy sort of, if you're big enough that you can get people enough mad enough people to come after them, then you'll have a voice in today's world. But if you don't, if you just have like 50 followers and you're not angry enough, then you won't. And to me, that was not a win. Even though I got back into my channel, I still felt really depressed that was the way that this whole thing goes down.
Yes, exactly. It's really unfair, and I'm grateful for the amount of, Twitter followers I have. I'm great of course, was grateful for all the YouTube followers that I had and I guess still have, and it was very I think everything happens for a reason. Yes, it was the most bullshit strike of all time from something that happened in July that so many other mainstream news channels covered, like MSNBC, NBC, Fox, I don't know, the Spanish one. They all get to keep
Telemundo.
they tell them like, they all got to keep their broadcasts up where they talked about the same exact fight that I did. So and I, and I'm grateful for all the friends I have that work in this kind of corner of the internet who I was able to call up right away, like the Quartering and Nick Ricada and Gary Beekler from Nerdrotic. So many people gave me so much advice. The outpouring of support was amazing. But I was still like, wow, this is kind of bullshit because if I was a much smaller, great with fewer followers or whatever, I mean, they didn't give a shit. I waited out the week strike and here I am.
Mhm.
But it really was, I got someone from Team YouTube to respond on Twitter because I had thousands of comments and retweets and
What did they say?
a lot of people in my corner, they're just like, "Oh no, we reviewed it and it's still a strike," basically. Like the appeal was rejected and it took like a day or so for that to happen, which I was told to expect that.
Hmm.
Um so we are going to see there might be some interesting developments in the future, but I really have to wait till things are happening before I tease it anymore. It seems like, well, what the hell is anybody's recourse? They're just allowed to take you out for a week, and a lot of people are like, well, it's because the election is coming up. Well, they would care about you if you had 300K followers. Well, maybe it was just your haters trying to screw you over before you did this 48-hour live stream project that we were out doing in Orlando. So it shouldn't
It's
come
hard
down
to
to how
know.
many Twitter followers you have.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that way
No,
because then
it
it is
shouldn't
like
be that way,
it
especially
shouldn't be
because
a
Twitter sucks too.
yeah, it's like now that it's become this popularity contest, like your voice only matters if you have like hundreds of thousands or thousands of people who can
Yeah.
echo
And
you.
I I really don't do well on Twitter because I mean, psychologically, I don't do well on Twitter. I mean, I don't do well on Twitter if the game is followers and whatnot. I only have, I think, like 7 or 8,000, but mostly because I don't use it other than to just find people for my podcast. Because it feels like to succeed on Twitter, you either have to be really mean or really funny, and just use it as just comedy, or or just smoke people, just smoke check people every couple hours every day. And I guess I'd feel more comfortable doing the funny thing if I was really funny, but I don't like being really mean to people. And I can't keep my thoughts to a few sentences. So I just freeze. I'll have a tweet up and then I'll think about it. And I'm like, I'm not sending that. And so then I just don't send anything. But then that means that, like when you really need it, that's all I do on Twitter. If you go through my Twitter feed, you're mostly going to find, hey, YouTube, you suspended me for this. It's like every other tweet is basically me saying, YouTube, you suspended me. This is bullshit. Let me back in. And I don't know. That also is depressing too, that's all I use Twitter for, but it really is.
Yeah, that we use Twitter for help.
Yeah, it is. It's like the other guy that's like got problems that you get to go beat up your abusive boyfriend, but you don't really want to be around him very long because he's also got issues,
Yes.
So
It's like Twitter is the son of the CEO or something, and like Twitter's the
Yeah.
CEO, and like Twitter's the annoying son that you're like, oh god, I have to go talk to this guy, but like it's like, all right, he does like you. It's easier to deal with him than the boss,
Yeah.
and like
it was like the Kappa Alphas at the college that I went to. It's like you didn't have a social life unless you hung out with them, but they were also really annoying. No offense if you were a KA, but that's
did
just
you
kind of how they
do
were.
the whole rush thing? We didn't have that where
I
I went to
did.
college.
Yeah,
What
I
was
was a
like the
Chi-O.
what was the
Chi-Ho,
craziest
as they
thing?
say.
A Kaiho. What was the craziest thing you had to do?
Oh my gosh, I gotta remember this. This is like 20 years ago.
I remember
Well,
we didn't have I'll give you some time to think. We didn't have sororities at Fairfield because it was a Jesuit school.
mhm.
I don't know if that's the reason or just that's what they told us. But I did have sort of for swim team, quite the initiation. Involved a lot of shots of Majorska, many of which I fed to the plant that was next to me. And then I think I had to run around the house in my bathing suit and jump in the Long Island Sound. So it could have been worse.
I don't even think I know what that is that you said you dumped in the plants. Is that alcohol?
Majorska, it's the cheapest vodka money can buy. It's basically you could take the paint off your car with it.
Okay. I definitely cannot drink that now. I got away with some stuff when I was in college. I think just you're younger. I can't even believe what I could wake up and shake off back then. If I have a second glass of wine nowadays, I'm like 50% gonna get a migraine the next day. It's pretty bad. I don't know
Wine is
how we
yeah,
did it.
wine is super sugary, and I noticed that too when I was doing keto for a while. I was very much off it this week, but the sugar really does a number on you, and they don't talk about that. And so does bread. Like anybody who's like struggling with weight loss, just stop eating bread. Like you're
Yeah.
that's really it.
Yeah, no, it's but that's hard. I make sourdough. That's one of the things, one of the talents that I've acquired over the
Ooh.
last couple of years. I'm really into food, like where food comes from and how it affects your health and the just a whole like centralized food system, which is you've seen disruptions in because of COVID or other issues. I covered the environment the last 5 years of my reporting career, and um, I would get these press passes or not press passes, press kits with a cow out on grass and it looks so happy and everything. And then you'd be at the farm. You're like, that's not what they look like, so, and it wasn't even necessarily an animal welfare issue for me. It was, I started to learn like, if the animal was sick, it was likely that the food that I got from the animal was going to make me sick. And so it's sort of,
Oh.
we're kind of connected that way. And, anyway, so I got really into that. Why am I telling you this? What were we talking about right
We were
before?
talking about initiation into fraternities.
Yeah, but
and
what does that have anything
sororities.
to do with it? Oh, sourdough.
Like
'Cause you're
oh,
talking about
sourdough.
bread.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So did you know that like a lot of the sourdough bread you buy at stores is just flavored with sourdough flavoring? It's not, sourdough, the reason that it tastes the
Wow.
way it does is because you naturally you create the yeast by creating a starter, like what you put the flour and water together and add a little bit more every day for about a week. And then these probiotic bacteria rise, they grow and then they create the bubbles. And then it's like a natural, yeast that, makes the bread rise, which normally you would
Cool.
go to the store and you'd buy yeast and you'd add it. But that's what the sour taste comes from is you're creating the yeast yourself. And so it's supposed to be a lot healthier because there's no additives, there's no preservatives, you make it yourself. It's a probiotic food. Technically, I guess you might say you bake them out when you put them in the oven, but it's got a lot more vitamins and minerals and stuff in it than the bread you buy at the grocery store. So I do that. So I feel better eating that now, but carbs are definitely a hard one for me, especially like I'm staring at this right now. I took
Yeah.
my 2-year-old trick-or-treating and she's still got the memory of a dog. So she doesn't really remember that she had this. So I
That's
keep it
probably
in
for
here.
the best. Yeah, be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, honey, it's weird. You only got 3 pieces of candy. We were out all night."
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
So
Right.
crazy. I guess your
Yeah.
costume wasn't good enough. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, we had a couple trick-or-treaters come. I loved it. Like, I rushed out. I ran out at 5 o'clock because I was like part of me was like, "I'm gonna get the candy that I want. I'm gonna get Nerds. I'm gonna get white Kit Kats. I'm gonna get mini Twizzlers. I'm gonna
There
get
you go.
Butterfingers. I'm gonna get all the weird candy that I like because it was just my excuse. But I'm gonna try to, like, cool it on the candy for sure."
Yeah, well, once you start, it's more addictive than cocaine. I can't remember the guy that wrote the book. There's some guy wrote a book about how sugar is 10 times more addictive than cocaine because of the dopamine
Wow.
response of your brain. But then add to that the actual addictive chemicals put in the artificial stuff. So I mean that's just like natural sugar. So
I remember because when I was in college, oh my God, it was a really stressful time in my life, and I would just like eat oh my God, not just regular food, but I would eat so much stuff, and it was because it was like the stress, and then you get the dopamine
yeah.
hit, and it's like it goes away, and you don't want to deal with your problems or your lack of study skills or whatever it is, the stress, or you're overweight, or nobody's talking to you because you got braces and short hair. But I just was like, candy.
Okay,
So
how old are you? How long ago did you go to college?
I graduated in '05,
Okay.
so it doesn't
You're a
I
little
feel
younger than I am. I graduated in '03.
I was a kid still.
I'm your elder.
I will respect you as
Do as I
such.
say.
I did not looking back, I was like, that was an extension of high school. That was literally high school, but with a campus.
Yeah.
I did not learn. I was not equipped. I don't know who to blame, myself probably primarily, but teachers, guidance counselors. I did not have the study skills. I didn't have direction. I didn't know like really what I was good at, or like how what I was good at could translate to making a living off of it. And now it's like, I remember I graduated, I had a communications degree, media studies, focus, women's studies minor because I was going through a feminist phase. And I graduated, and I what did I do? I gave tours at Radio City Music Hall for, like, minimum
Right.
wage.
Right.
You're telling me after 4 years and a bachelor's degree, that's the best I could and that's the best I
Mhm.
could do.
Mhm. Yeah, in TV news, it would be way better to just save your money, go do an internship at a TV station near you, and work your way up. You'd save so much money, and, you'd probably game the system faster.
I really thought like you, wanted to be a reporter. I had 2 internships at NBC, and then I really was like, "I'm gonna get this page job." Again, giving tours for minimum wage. Didn't get that, so then I ended up at Radio City. But how did you so you knew what you wanted, you went straight into reporting, or did you have a bit of a journey there?
I didn't really wanna be a reporter, actually. I wanted to be a producer because I noticed that, I didn't really wanna be on TV, but then also I noticed, like, when I would do my internships that the people who came in and said that they wanted to be on TV were always put in sort of, I don't know, wardrobe or something not fun, getting coffee, and if you said you wanted to be a producer, which in the newsroom is like, I wanna work versus I just wanna be a celebrity, then you get to do cool
Yeah.
stuff. So I was like, "Well, I wanna be a producer," and it worked. I did get to do a lot of really cool things. I think it helped me get my next internship and my next internship. So by the time I was right out of college, I was producing for Fox News Channel's morning show, Fox and Friends, and I was there for a year and then left to I decided I didn't wanna be in television anymore because I didn't really like being a producer, but at the time, it didn't hit me that the reason I didn't like being a producer was because producers producers are kind of like, they stay in the newsroom. They're a little sort of vampire-y in that way. They don't like come out in daylight and like meet new people and stuff. And they like to control things. So they sort of usually have a bird's eye view of the show, and they tell you what to do. And I hate telling people what to do. I don't want to know what anyone else is doing, really. I have no interest in that. And I don't like being in an office. And so at the time, though, I didn't think, well, why don't you try being a reporter, stay in the business, but try being a reporter. So I thought, well, the next best thing would be, I want to be a psychologist. So I decided to actually get a master's degree in theology and psychology. I got a master of divinity degree. I went to seminary for 3 years at Boston University School of Theology. And then my plan was to do a PhD in psychology and be a therapist. But I had one really good professor who noticed how screwed up I was and recommended I go to therapy, which then made me realize I don't want to be a therapist anymore. And then also I had a great preaching professor who in one of his lectures made me start thinking about journalism, and the responsibility that journalists have, which I had started to notice was kind of deteriorating. So I decided to just try it out, go back to the news business as a reporter, see if I liked it. And that was it. I just quit in 2019, and here I am today. I don't know what I do now, but it's something affiliated with that.
None of us do. Why did you quit?
I quit for two reasons. One was because I was starting to wake up to how crappy my reporting was, in large part due to the fact that I just did not have the time and resources to do a good job. A lot of people don't realize that reporters, they go from one big topic to the next big topic to the next big topic, and they have very little time to understand what they're talking about. But they're also told that they somehow are these experts, these like mini experts. So they live with this false sense of competency about the subjects that they're reporting on, and they never really learn enough to realize that actually they don't know what they're talking about. But when you start covering a beat, you have the opportunity to see, like, wait a second, because you cover it day in and day out. And so over time, you if you're paying attention, you realize that there's a whole world of information out there that you're not tapping into. And so when I started covering the environment, it took a couple years, but I was getting into like alternative media, and I was hearing different opinions on climate change, for instance, and on government regulation, whether that's the best thing or the worst thing, like how corporations, for instance, are somehow able to skirt the rules. So is it really about the environment, or is it about lobbying and money and politics and all that stuff? And so when I started to realize that it wasn't as cut and dry as like, you question climate change regulation, therefore you hate the environment, which was the way that a lot of people, and especially in Seattle, which is where I was reporting, that's the way people looked at it. Then I started saying, well, I can't go on television anymore and act like I'm an expert. And I just feel like if you let me go on and say, hey, I only had 2 hours today to figure this out, so I don't really know what I'm talking about, take it with a grain of salt. If they would let me say that at the beginning of every report, I would be fine.
Wouldn't that be so refreshing, though, to hear Brian Stelter, who's no longer with us? Who knows where he is? Same place where Matt Lauers. I don't know where he went. But like if they were just like, hey, yeah, I really don't know that much about this, but from what I've read in 2 hours, here we go.
Right. I'm telling you, I mean, it would make a big difference. And that's to me the thing that if I like ran a newsroom, there are a couple things I would do differently, but that's one. I would open the newscast instead of the most trusted name in news or with the most accurate name in news. Don't trust anybody else. Trust us. I would just be like, we had to get this on by 4. What do you expect? Like that would be.
What do you want from us?
Yeah. What do you want?
See, I would trust those people. You're already starting from an honest perspective. What else would you change if you ran your own newsroom?
Say that again.
What else would you change if you ran your own newsroom other than like upfront honesty about lack of expertise?
Yeah. I would make everybody sit in quiet at least for a couple hours once a week. I'd force people to be quiet, and either you could go for a hike or you sit in the corner of the office or something, but you can't talk. You have to do some self-reflection. And then the other thing I would do is like weekly, I would pick a topic and I would ask journalists to read through, a couple different story options from different perspectives, and not just like different mainstream perspectives, alternative viewpoints, and then tell me, see, this is what I would do in journalism school if I ever taught too. But so I guess I would just wish I had a manager who did this when I was, because I never, I never was, then again, I was a history major, but I don't think I would have learned this in journalism school because my peers didn't, and they studied journalism, where you'd say, okay, who do you want to win in this, the way this is being written out, this is the good guy and this is the bad guy, according to this outlet. Who do you identify with and why? Like, what is the reaction, your natural, gut reaction to my 2-year-old is walking into my office right now. And my husband is getting her. So she's, hi, honey. Anyway, so now she's under my desk and it's going to go south. Anyway.
I love that clip of like, what was it? The guy on CNN where like his 2 kids, like walk into the room and it's like, they're so goofy. And then like the mom comes in like and rips them away.
Yeah, I know.
And shuts the door.
Sweet. It's okay, Lily. Yeah. So no, she comes on my show all the time, but that was a quick grab by my husband. So I have to give him credit for that one. Anyway, so they just don't promote self-awareness. It's often the exact opposite. It's like, we assume that you've come to this profession with some idea about your biases. Like, do you hate your mom or dad? And so you project that onto this person. I mean, what are your problems that you're carrying with you that you are projecting onto your subject matter material? Because in a profession where you're dealing with interpretation of truth, really, there's no science to it. In a lot of ways, it is an art, and it requires that you be a healthy individual. That's why I'm actually looking back on it first. I'm like, why did I go to seminary? That was kind of dumb. I mean, what am I doing here? But I realized that, like, I did 2 years of therapy and I read some of the greatest philosophers of all time. And I thought through some of the biggest topics, like death, what happens when you die, like what's the purpose of life, all these big things that I don't think the average reporter has really sat down and struggled with. And when you get to the opposite side of that, it's kind of like you're free. You're not trying to sell anything anymore. You've settled a lot of these scores with yourself and with God, and so you're just like, I don't have to win. I'm gonna tell you what I found here and what I think to be the case, but I don't have to win. I don't need to argue with you. I don't need to save you. I don't need you to believe me. I don't care what you do with it. And so you're not codependent anymore with the viewers. And I think, that this idea that somehow, because we're in this profession, we just automatically have the self-awareness to handle that heaviness of a profession, I think is wrong. So I would do the best I could to try to get people to just be regularly quiet with themselves and thinking about what their baggage is that they're bringing into work every day.
It's like, what changed? Like, I remember growing up, I couldn't, maybe Dan Rather. I always looked at the news, and of course, like, you're a little kid, you're growing up, the news is boring, and you're not politically activated yet because you don't have a job, you're not paying bills or taxes or anything. But I remember the news was like very respected, and it wasn't so much about like everyone. They were well known because they were good at what they did. But it wasn't like this fame component where like it was like the Don Lemon brand and it's like, are we, and you worked in this industry. So it's like, do people just become more egotistical, more self-centered? Is it social media? Like just making like flaming the celebrity obsession?
I think social media made a big difference, but I don't think it created it. I just think it amplified the issues that were already there because you can now become a brand yourself. And the newsrooms were like, well, let's capitalize on this. Let's hire people who are already bringing a following with them and have a brand. And then they let the monster, genie out of the bottle. And they actually, they want you to become more of an egomaniac and to grow that because they think it helps them. Maybe in the national world that might work. I'm not convinced in like local news that having somebody who does social media really well is going to help your TV, because people who are really into Instagram influencers, I don't feel like watch the 5 o'clock news. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but they still think that. They've started to get rid of anchors and reporters who were kind of there for a long time. I had a friend who got booted because she turned like 42 or something, and they hired a 23-year-old, Instagram influencer, and they're thinking, well, if we get somebody who does Instagram or Twitter and has a big following, then they'll watch the newscast, but it doesn't translate because old people watch the 5 o'clock news. Like, no offense, but usually a 24-year-old Instagram influencer has a following that's not watching the 5 o'clock news. So back to your like original question, when it came to like leaving, I had the competency to start realizing that I was not able to cover what I needed to cover thoroughly enough. And I was never going to have in the format that my position was, I was never going to ever have the time. It just wasn't going to change. So from that digital perspective that we're just talking about, not being an influencer or anything, but I was also getting plugged into this world, this world of podcasting, alternative media. And I was seeing how they were covering the same topics that I was. Now, granted, they're giving their opinion a lot more than I was. But I actually found it, like you were saying, to be more refreshing and authentic, because even though you were getting more of them, I guess, than you would if you're watching the news, because we were told like, don't share your bias. But the problem is it was always leaking into the news anyway. So it was kind of a fake objectivity. So I was like, why don't you let me do something like this for you? So I was an environmental reporter, and all the stations in the Pacific Northwest were taking my content anyway. We had, my company Tegna is one of the largest in the country. And we had a bunch of TV stations in the Northwest, and they were already taking my report. So turned me into a regional correspondent, let me do something like a podcast or a digital version of what this TV version is, which is like 90 seconds, run and gun every day, where I have no time to know what I'm talking about. Let me do something like this. And, it'll get us into the alternative world. It'll also help my journalism, come up to par with where I think it needs to be. I'll have the time and the ability to talk through stuff. And then the other thing was, selfishly, I wanted to get out of the city. My husband and I want a country life, want a homestead. And so we were like, to get out of Seattle, I had to make it so that I wasn't coming into a newsroom every day. So that also would have given me the opportunity to kind of centralize myself in the country and, and have the lifestyle that I wanted. But they thought I was nuts. And so I quit. That's the long story of it.
Now, before you quit, or as you were quitting, did you notice the seeds of, I guess, like censorship? I mean, and like, what was your experience with, like, okay, you're in the mainstream news world, and then you're beginning this, like, oh, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do a podcast. And it's like, so how did you did you see signs of this? Like, and what it kind of inspired you to have a podcast where censorship is your focus?
When people see bias and assume censorship in the legacy press, I would say that 80% of it is self-censorship, or not even, I'm not even sure I would call it censorship, because a lot of folks in the newsrooms are like aligned with the same ideology. So there are very few people who are dissenters and like just quiet there, like, oh, I just probably shouldn't say anything because I'm going to lose my job, or, I don't know if I think this is safe and effective, or I don't know if Big Pharma is really here to help me, or whatever the thing is, and I'm just going to not say anything because they pay 75% of our salaries. That's not how most of them think. Most are just aligned with the ideology. They're manipulated by the same content that they, brainwash us with. And so it wasn't until I started kind of waking up and questioning things that then the direct censorship happened. So people always ask, like, what were the things that somebody said, you cannot talk about that? And if you had asked me that before this happened to me, I would have told you, no way. My boss would never say that. That's crazy. But it did. So Washington was debating these, this is before COVID, 2019, early 2019. Washington State was debating in the legislature whether to get rid of certain exemptions for kids' vaccine mandates to go to school. And I covered the environment, so I wasn't going to cover the topic, but I was pitched an email by Informed Choice Washington saying that they had some doctors coming to town for a conference and they were going to be talking about this issue. And I had never heard a doctor say that kids should be able to have an exemption and not be forced to have vaccinations to go to school. I had always heard like a mom arguing that versus the Department of Health arguing the opposite. And that to me just seemed like an unfair fight. If you're going to put a doctor with somebody, I would like to see another doctor debate them. I just think that, just because I personally am interested in the issue, again, to go back to what I was saying before, I don't I'm not emotionally attached to the winner. I just want to know what the truth is. I feel like that's journalism, right? So I pitched the email that I got, hey, maybe we should go to this. And remember, I wasn't going to cover it. It was just for them in the newsroom to decide, hey, we want to go to the conference. And my boss called me. When you get the call and they don't put it in writing, it's pretty serious. So he called me and he said,
Yep.
So he said, you are never allowed to pitch or discuss this topic in the newsroom because I do not trust your judgment on this issue, especially if you think this is a worthy story topic. Like you would even listen to Informed Choice Washington, which is like, they're Informed Choice, whatever the state is. They're usually the ones that are aligned with Bobby Kennedy's group, Children's Health Defense.
Yep.
And, they just give other people a different perspective. So that was one thing. Vaccines were a no-no. You could not talk about vaccines. So you can only imagine like what it was like. I was out of the newsroom, but by the time the COVID vaccine came around, I'm sure it was nuts. And then the other thing was climate change. If you question the establishment narrative on climate change, you were also psychopathic.
Wow. I'm seeing some very interesting comments in the chat here from Stevie J. Don't share your bias means they're training you to be deceptive. Do you agree with this?
That's a good point. I guess I sort of can agree with you on that one. It would be very difficult in the format of a TV news operation. Maybe if you're writing something for the New York Times, you could do this, but keep in mind, we keep stories to 90 seconds. So if I was to take a topic of any kind of complexity and try to tell you what was going on and then also back you up to like, hey guys, just want to let you know, like I have this connection and then I used to think this, but now I think that. And I mean, we never get it on TV. So you really can't do that in the format that is at least corporate television news. Maybe you could have caveats like that when you're writing. And I could see that. I mean, I could see that as helpful. I guess my goal would be that eventually, like, you don't have to say that because it's not affecting, it's not affecting your reporting in a way that would deceive the audience, because you're not self-deceiving. But yeah, I mean, if you're, at the point where you want to, you talk about that and you have the time to do it. I think the problem with TV is like, you don't know who's watching. Podcasts, everybody's coming back to see you or me and sort of the theme of the podcast. So that they want to stick around for a long time. But television, you don't know who's watching, and they may the person who likes the A block story may not like the next story in the B block. And you're trying to keep people watching. So you go really fast because their attention span for something they don't like is very short. So that's why, like, you'll see these really quick stories. We're like, okay, well, we want to keep your attention, but say you hate the story about the fire down the street. We'll have the mayor's press conference coming up next. We'll only bore you for 45 seconds on the fire. Then we'll get to the mayor's press conference. But if you hate that, we have a murder next. So we'll keep the mayor's press conference to a minute, and then we'll get you to the murder. And they're just constantly trying to keep your attention and keep you watching to the commercial break. And so there's no time to do any, there's no time to do any in-depth exploration on yourself or the subject matter in that kind of format, which is, like I said, then just tell people, hey, we don't think you're going to watch for a long time. So this is a 90-second short version of what you could find online, and even that maybe we're not sure is totally accurate because we just didn't give our reporter that much time.
And how long has the format been this way? Or do you think it's just changed to keep up with other forms of media?
It has changed. Well, I started noticing differences in about when I got in the business, it was end of 2007, and they were starting to do this thing called multimedia journalism, or like one-man band was what it was called. So you as the reporter did everything yourself. You shot the video, you edited the video, you wrote the script, you voiced it, you went on TV, you did everything. And normally that was back in the day, you did that in your first job in market 175, which is like the smallest market out there. But by the time you got to Seattle or Atlanta or Chicago, you weren't shooting yourself anymore. You were shooting with a photographer, and sometimes you even had an engineer that was working with you. So sometimes a 3-person crew. And as a cost-saving mechanism, they they decided to have you do everything. That way you could have 2 crews for the price of 1. You would take the photographer and teach the photographer how to write and voice, and then you would teach the reporter how to shoot. And now you have 2 crews. That was in part because in order to make more money, or save money, I guess they would say, but it was really to make more money for the people at the top. They were getting rid of syndicated broadcast shows. So like they would cancel Ellen or Oprah, and they would start a live broadcast. So it used to be you'd watch something or Young and the Restless, you'd watch your soap opera at
Oh
noon
my
or
God, I watched
3
that
o'clock.
show.
You
Yeah.
love that show? Yeah, I had a babysitter that used to watch
My
it all the time.
mom loved that show, and so it was just always on in our house growing up.
What was the one that had the sand that went through the
Days of Our Lives?
Oh, yeah, that was the one that she used to watch, yeah. There's something very soothing about that, watching that. Why was I watching soap operas? That was probably not good content for a kid,
No.
right? That was not
Yeah, it just
healthy.
seemed like make-believe to me. I just was like, nobody's relationships are like this because I'm like, this is not a real marriage. They're not fighting about money like my mom
Yeah,
and
they're
dad
fighting
do.
about why did you get to kill that person and I wasn't able
Yeah.
to, dump their body?
I'm like,
Yeah, nobody
why
gets
is
to
the
have as much
mom wearing
fun.
high heels inside? That's not what moms do.
Right. Yeah, you got high heels with, like, fuzz on the front, and their toes sticking out with, like, French manicure toes. French manicure toes really bother me.
That's
I don't know what
yeah. There's
I'm
definitely
sorry.
there's a very particular type of woman who gets a French manicure on their toes, and
Yeah, I
I don't know. I
agree.
probably have more negative than positive things to say about that stereotype, but like
I'm
it's yeah.
sorry to anyone who does that, but yeah, it still
It's a
bothers me.
red flag. It's a red flag to me. Yeah.
Don't don't take any Halloween candy from a woman with French manicured toes. Okay, so yeah, so when in the 2008 2009, I think it may have been the recession that really prompted that. As I'm thinking back on it, so they were losing advertising revenue. The housing market crash happened, and so to save money, they were cutting broadcasts and then creating their own news programming. So it was cheaper because now instead of paying Paramount for a TV show that filled the 3 to 4 o'clock slot or the 4 to 5 o'clock slot, now your anchors that you're already paying and your reporters that you're already paying are filling the slot for you. And that's when it went from an hour in the morning, maybe an hour at noon, and then like an hour in the evening to almost wall-to-wall live coverage. And so in order to do that, you need the staff. Well, if you hire a bunch of people, then you've just defeated the purpose of saving money, right? Because that was the whole point. So now you, like I said, you split the crews, you teach everybody how to do everything. And now you've got a reporter that comes in for a 9:30 editorial board meeting that's not done till like 10:30 sometimes. And they have to be live at noon. And then sometimes they have to be live at 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. And, the Nightside crew comes in at 3 or 3:30. That's when they have their editorial meeting. And they got to be live at 6 sometimes, and 7 and 8 and 9, and it just never ends. I mean, there's like 3 hours a day when there's not a live newscast, and you're constantly churning out material. There's just no way to do good journalism in an environment like that. Not unless you're covering, like I said, if it's like a dirty, this guy banged this dude off of the bicycle in downtown Seattle and then, rode it into Puget Sound. And then we saw him riding off on a whale. I mean, that's something I guess you could cover without thinking much about it. But, any topic with any sense of complexity is it's just impossible to cover anything like that.
Yeah. Cause it takes, you have to report on things as they're happening. And like, as we know, things happen that might not be, I don't know, maybe it's a false flag, maybe it's, meant to look a certain way to convince a certain group of people that things are going on. It just seems really hard to do. I sometimes feel like I can't keep up with the news. I can't I have to do, I love this. I love, doing podcasts, but I'm always feel like I never know enough. I'm never reading enough. I'm never listening to enough, like, diverse sources. So
Well, a lot of reporters, I think, are not. That's another thing. I don't think managers in newsrooms are often enough telling their staff how targeted we are for special interest to manipulate the public. And I just didn't walk around with that that lion sense of skepticism, that there's like predators around. I was just trusting the government and trusting hospital groups and all these organizations now that I now know have ties to, or they themselves are trying to manipulate the public for their particular propagandist interests. I just wasn't. That just wasn't something that people were telling me on a regular basis. And maybe you say, well, you should have known that when you got in the business. But I mean, how are you supposed to know? Nobody taught me that. So if you at least even come into the newsroom and took a little bit of that, then maybe, so say you still go on TV at 4 or 5 o'clock and you haven't really had a whole lot of time, you're going to be less likely to present certain things that you'd say, what is the government's, what could they potentially get out of this if I say this talking point of theirs? Like, what are they trying to do here? And then maybe you go, you know what? I'm not going to say it. I'm just not going to say it because I haven't been able to confirm it. And but in other words, now you just read press releases because you're not thinking like this has been intentionally curated to prompt a particular response from the public. You're just thinking they're here to tell you the truth. Let me tell you a quick story. What I think probably it was before I started covering the environment. So maybe a year or two into my tenure in Seattle, the Department of Health sent out this press release about a doctor who they said was experimenting on his patients. And that was just that's what they said. We pulled his license, he's suspended, and he's experimenting on his patients. And so we called the office, but it was 5 o'clock. So of course they weren't there. And we didn't care that they weren't there to defend themselves. We just went outside their, office anyway and said, this guy's experimenting on his patients. Can you believe that? Wow. And he's suspended. Well, the next day his son called me and was like, well, that was dirty. You guys never gave us a chance to respond. And that's not what's happening, and kind of explain their side of the story. And he had been working on these, they were experimental, but they were allowed. They were legal. They were treatments for cancer. He was a naturopathic kind of oncology doctor. And he was getting people that were sent from Seattle Cancer Care Alliance that had been given up on by mainstream doctors. And they were alive. I met with his patients the following day, like 10 of them, people who had stage 4 lung cancer, multiple myeloma, which killed my grandfather in 6 months, brain cancer, stuff that you should not be alive for, like 10 years, long time. And all their treatments were thrown out. 26 people died after that story. I mean, you talk about like facing yourself in the mirror. That was one of the big wake up calls for me, that I was like, okay, they didn't tell us the full truth. We didn't wait to find out because we were like, well, everybody else is saying it and it's probably true. So let's just go outside his office. I didn't know about the medical industrial complex at that point in time. I was starting to question things like that, but I just wasn't aware of how thick the propaganda is. And, that had real world consequences for people and their families. And because we ran interference for the government, and we let them just come in without due process, throw a bunch of people's medicine, their vaccine. He called them a cancer vaccine, but that's not really what they were. It was like he would take proteins from their own blood and like amplify it and inject it back into them, almost like immunotherapy now. Before that was a thing. So your body was fighting its own cancer. And that's why it was so successful, because you weren't just like radiating people or giving them chemo. And so he would have them sign these waivers and everything. But anyway, there was this, of course, because he was doing something that was alternative to what the cancer treatments that are very expensive were doing. He was on their radar. And I'm sure those doctors were like, well, he's just a snake oil salesman. But you know what? This is the way I look at it. The people I met with should have had the right to choose him as their doctor. They should never have had their treatments thrown away. If they want to have that and they're saying this is helping me 10 years later, when every other doctor gave up on them and told them they had 3 months to live, I feel like the Department of Health was grossly malfeasant. That's a word, malfeasant, or that was gross malfeasance on their part, and they used us to run interference for them so that they could just go in like a bull in a china shop and ruin a bunch of people's lives, frankly. And so that was one of the first times I was like, okay, this stuff is happening all the time. And I had to wake up to that like 10 years, or I don't know, 7 years into my career. If I just had a manager my first year say, hey, like if I was manager and I told you that story, like, hey, you're a new reporter. I want you to know what happened to me when I was in your shoes. And every day I want you to remember that this kind of stuff is happening. It may come in the form of like environmental activism or health activism, or we're here to protect you, or the government's here to protect you, or this person's terrible, or this is an extremist, or these people are domestic threats, or whatever. You need to constantly be on guard that you're being used by special interests to run propaganda. And I think that one thing would have made a huge difference for me.
Oh, yes. This to consider, what could I possibly be used for right now?
Right.
If you can take your
Yeah.
own ego out of it, yes. If you can take that, of course, but then you get bogged down by these people are paying my bills. Oh my God, I don't have anything else to do. I have a family. And then maybe the ego component's like, but I'm kind of famous. This is kind of my thing. Like, I don't want to lose my flashy attention. Uh, to just stop and think, like, who could be using me for what by saying this? I know you have to scram. Allison, we have a
Oh,
quick.
my interview pushed back 10 minutes, so we have an extra 10
Yes!
minutes. We
Okay,
could
okay,
probably go to like 9:15ish, 9:20 if you want.
okay, okay, this
Or
is
I
from
guess for you that's 12:15, 12:20.
this is from, my buddy Cam, Flagrant Triggers. Allison, do you think mainstream media will fail or make YouTube the next cable TV? Seems it's forcing itself into independent creation space.
I do think YouTube is becoming mainstream media. I think they're promoting the legacy press and are becoming an arm of corporate television, and I think the newspapers are getting in on the game too. When I was just at the tail end of my career, my bosses were waking up to the revenue that could be generated on YouTube. So there's a lot of interest on their part to get in on the game. They all know each other. Their companies all know each other. So they get special privileges. They get promoted. Obviously, Susan Wojcicki has called them their authoritative sources, even though they get things wrong constantly. So I actually think, yeah, the question is, do you think mainstream media will fail or make YouTube the next cable TV? I think YouTube is making itself the next cable TV because they're partnering with the mainstream press as the sort of safe partnerships. And I mean, maybe it's partially because they really believe that these guys are authoritative. You got to be pretty dumb, I think, or like willfully ignorant at this point to not see how ridiculous that is. But I try to see ignorance probably more often than I think aware malfeasance. I think most people think they're participating in some kind of public good, but I still think it's evil. I just think that most people find a way to sleep at night by telling themselves that they're doing something good for people. I think the vast majority of people don't know that they're doing evil. Because otherwise, I think you could probably rationalize with them. It's very hard to rationalize with somebody who's got this messiah complex about them, where they think they're here to like nanny you all the time. So I do think they're kind of one and the same now. And I think, and I don't think that's going to change. So I think, is that failure or is that just media, moving into the next, I guess when you say by failed, you mean, is it going to fail like in the traditional sense? You turn on the TV and you watch the 5 o'clock news. That will probably be gone at some point. I think you'll have streaming services and on demand. But I think like for where it goes for alternative, like the way YouTube used to be, I don't think you're going to get that on YouTube as much anymore. You're going to have to go to places like Rumble or the alternative platforms that are out there. Cause I think YouTube is just, I think YouTube's failing in that sense. I think it's a failure of what it set out to be. And it's just becoming an arm of the legacy press and the government by virtue of that and big corporations.
Yeah, I definitely think YouTube is failing in like the public eye, sort of like in the court of the public eye. I don't know if that's how the phrase people use, but it's just like, they see who they're banning and why, who they're striking and why. And it's like YouTube needs mainstream media to kind of like, legitimize itself. And then mainstream media needs YouTube to keep them sort of like hip and fresh and like where all the people are. And it's still, people might probably going to call me a hypocrite for streaming on YouTube right now. It's like I have to probably fix my settings. I think I didn't even put in Rumble for this one because it's that new. I just set up my thing the other day. But honestly, for me, it's like I'm going to try to go out to the most people I can for as long as I can, and without self-censoring so much, like take the fear out of it, like just be as honest as I can, and then like whoever's gonna take me out, and I'll stream where I can, and just try to be true to myself.
Yeah, YouTube is kind of like a business window for people to window shop, and then I use it just to get my stuff out there, but I don't, if I'm covering something sensitive, I used to say, "Screw you, YouTube. I'm going to say whatever I want." And then I realized quickly that was not a winning strategy on YouTube, because they would just boot me, and they had no problem with that, and probably would love for me to give them a reason to be booted off. So now if I cover something that violates their terms of service, I just, I cover like whatever I think at the beginning we can talk about, and then we just cut the stream. And you know what? If you want to go somewhere else, go to the other platforms. If not, hey, stay on YouTube. But I do think giving up on YouTube at this point is not a great option, simply because it's like the largest search engine, and that's how you get the word out. And frankly, like I was at a point years ago where I didn't know what Odyssey was, or Rumble. Well, Rumble, I guess these didn't exist, but I would just go onto YouTube, and slowly these ideas started to sink in. And then I was like wanting to hear more. So then I started finding people that were on like their own websites, because they were booted off of YouTube. But it took me a bridge. I needed a bridge to get to those places. So some people go, yeah, you complain about YouTube, and why are you still on it? And it's like, well, because not everybody is down the rabbit hole yet.
On
There are
Rumble,
a lot of people who, yeah, it's like they want to hear there's and some people are scared. They've been manipulated to think that if they listen to these other voices or these other ideas, that they're a crazy psychopath that can't come over for Thanksgiving dinner. And so they need people, I think, sometimes who are like me. Like I used to work in television news, and I'm on YouTube. I'm here to show you that this other world is not as scary as you've been told. And maybe it takes some people who have straddled the mainstream to, send to your grandma before they'll go listen to some of the other people, because, they've just been propagandized for so long that if you even in any way entertain an idea, you're going to become that person, and you're going to have ideological leprosy, and you're going to have to be kicked out of society. And, they really believe that. Like the media has done such a great job of convincing people that guilt by association works with ideas. So you can't even talk to somebody, associate with anybody. That's how I lost my job. When not my TV job, when I quit TV news, I took this day job shooting wildfire videos for the government, for our natural resources department here in Washington that fights wildfires. And it's totally unrelated to COVID. They're not the Department of Health or anything. It was just a wildfire and forest health based job. And I was shooting videos for them, as my day job. And then I would do this on the side. And they knew that I had my podcast when they hired me. But when I started talking to people who were censored over COVID, and they had a mandate for vaccination for employees, they caught on to the fact that I was associating publicly with people who were questioning mandates. And they told me that, it wasn't even me, because I do share my opinion, but more than anything, I was interviewing doctors and scientists who felt like what was going on was wrong. And so they told me to keep my job. I had to stop associating with those people publicly. That's really dangerous. That's why I could not comply with it. I'm like, first off, you're the government. So, you can First Amendment, hello. But secondly, like that's how they slowly control people, because if they can divide you, then you don't even need them anymore to babysit you and tell you what to do. You'll do it to yourself. You'll start saying, I don't want to talk to grandma publicly. I don't want to see her at Thanksgiving, because people are going to think this about me. If I talk to somebody who voted for this person, or didn't get this vaccine, or, doesn't like climate change, whatever the thing is, of the day, like if I associate with them, then everyone's going to know that I'm dirty too, or they're going to think I'm dirty. And that's so insane that you can't have conversations with people who have different ideas than you, because you are going to now suffer these societal consequences. So yeah, that's where we are now, though. And that's, Chrissy, I know I'm like going on a tangent here, but it's
dude, I'm like, I want to be like a black lady in church and yell out preach like this whole time. And it's like, that is what, and I want to tell people like, and I got used to it from being disliked and saying things that people don't like over years of being a comedian, and like slowly red pilling from like basically 2018. And then it really cranked up during the pandemic. And yes, I did say pandemic.
Yeah.
So
Hopefully they won't
and
they
so
won't
like
charge
it
you for that.
is scary. And I was talking to somebody. We met up with a family friend at the airport who said like, yeah, like I couldn't take the jab because I'm allergic to one of the ingredients in it. And
Mhm.
my own sister like brainwashed our mother and didn't invite us to like all these family events and wrote me a nasty email like you were selfish, you chose not to get vaxxed over us and the family. And like man, I heard that there was like this,
What do they think now? Now that that's all been walked back? You talk
what they
to 'em?
wanna say is, "Let's forgive everyone for what we did during
Oh, right,
during the
yeah.
pandemic." Like, "Oh, okay." Yeah, and, like, a lot of people were talking about this too. I think was it The Atlantic who put out this article, like, "Let's just do a pandemic amnesty." Yeah, okay, that's gonna have to come from Biden because he told us all that we were gonna die last
Yeah.
winter, that it was gonna be, like, the
He's still
winter of
saying
death.
that.
Yeah.
He's still saying
And it's
that.
crazy, like, they're telling me at this, like, family birthday party, someone was turning 100 years old that you had to and it was, like, not, like, my family, it was, like, my fiance's family, but, like, you had to have a negative COVID test to show up at the party, but then once you got there, that wasn't enough, they're testing your ass when you got to the party as well, and it's really
Yeah.
put in so many rifts between people. It's exactly what you're talking about. It's like it is shame by association, it is cancellation by association, public
Yeah.
association, and it's like and I'm so used to that because it's like, for years, it's like, okay, I went on Compound Media, immediately, I was starting to see friends leave me, comedy people I'd work with get real quiet and distant, and like, "Oh, it's because people have been calling Compound Media alt-right for years. Oh, you must be a Republican because you associate. Oh, you must be because Gavin McInnes used to have a show on there." It's just like and then it's just quickly you can just disregard whole swaths of people, and COVID
Yeah.
was just a big escalation of all of that on such a global scale. It's so scary, but it's kind of fascinating. Like if you can take a step back and if you're like have your lab coat and your clipboard on and you're like you could take a look at the last few years and be like, this was just a big test on people.
Yeah. Yeah, and most I think, go back to the media, I think, it was crazy how they had partnerships with, the departments of health and local health authorities. Like what the hell does that mean? I mean, that's one of the LHAs. That's one of the things that YouTube says you have to follow. Okay, well, I have doctors that come on, they're local health authorities, but apparently they are a wrong thing, local health authorities. So what does that even mean? But the journalists, they were outside these vaccine clinics. They're out there telling you go get your vaccine, and hey, hi, we're outside of Walgreens, they've got free vaccines, you go. I mean, what in the hell, dude?
Free
Like that is
donuts.
so
Remember the free donuts, Allison? Oh
yeah,
my
free time.
god.
I mean, oh well, they were doing the same thing in their newsrooms. I mean, so it's of course this is all totally normal for them because they were incentivized. I had an anchor from oh, what do they call it? Texoma. So it's like Texas, but on the Oklahoma border. So anyway, he was a Gray television reporter. So Gray Media is another one of the major conglomerates, and he had a allergy. And so he put in his exemption and everything. He was the main anchor and said, I can't because one of the preservatives that's in the vaccines I can't have, and they still fired him. And so that really changed the way he looked at things. He was somebody who had worked very hard for them and felt like he had given up, good portions of his life. He had young kids and he was just tossed out to dry. And I think for the journalists who were in those situations, they're probably rethinking a lot about their career, not just that now. But like, yeah, Brian Stelter, I mean, I remember him saying like Fox News Channel employees haven't posted their vaccine selfies yet. Like if you haven't posted your
Ew.
vaccine selfie,
What a
you're,
loser.
they were all doing that. I had friends who were like, I just got my vaccine, and like
That
reporters
was
that are
the
still in the,
That was
shut
the
up.
cringiest shit ever, and then people in the beginning forgetting to cover up, like, all their information, they'd just be like, here's my RL card with everything on it."
Yeah. It's like,
Ugh,
how in
like
the
high
heck do
school.
you how can you possibly think that you're covering this issue appropriately? That's why if you really want to understand what's going on, that's a great microcosm because would somebody who wanted you to catch on to like if they really knew what was going on, I guess you could make the argument that they were just feigning this celebration and this confidence in it. But to me, it takes less faith to think that they really believed in this. They're true believers. They really believe
Yeah.
like You guys just don't know what you're talking about. We know better than you, and we're here to save you from yourself. And that's how a lot of the journalists that are pushing this stuff think nowadays. And it's way, in my opinion, way more dangerous than a reporter who would know, like, yeah, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I just got to get this shit done today. And, pharma pays my bills. Like, that person, I think, is way more honest than the person who is going out there and thinking, like, or not, maybe not honest is the right word, but they're smarter, they're more aware than the person who is, I think the vast majority of the cogs in the wheel are just like, they have this massive ego. They've been told that journalism now is silencing people, not investigating or being curious and skeptical. It's about silencing dissenters and being the public trust authority in all of this. And that's so dangerous for people who don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I wonder if people are starting to feel dumb because again, like I agree with you. Like they must have been true believers. Like they're same people that I need to be the white hero for these minorities. Like I'm the only one who can
Right.
stand up for them and bring them equality that they've always had, by the way. Um
Mhm. Yeah,
we're
no, I mean,
born we're born free in this country. Like to that I mean, that's a whole other friggin' podcast. But these people must have really believed this. Like they must have really believed that the purebloods were gonna die and that they definitely could die if they hang around, the those
yeah.
people.
I had 2 coworkers. This was after I got fired, from DNR, who I was talking to because I thought they would be interested in the fact that a ton of the institutional knowledge about wildfire fighting in our state was lost to these vaccine mandates because people didn't get the vaccine, and so they weren't gonna be there for fire season. To me, that would be an interesting story regardless of what I thought about the vaccine. I mean, if there's gonna be something that's gonna have a long-term effect on your house's ability to survive wildfire season, I mean, I'd wanna know. And all they told me about was one said, I have no sympathy for people who did not get the vaccine. Another one said we would be out of this pandemic by now if people would just get vaccinated.
Yep.
And so you're just hearing them say this, you're like, I really hope you're not covering this topic because the fact that you guys just said that you have no curiosity. In fact, not only do you have no curiosity, it's the opposite. On certain issues, journalists think they're actually a better journalist by being ignorant of a particular topic. They have
Ooh.
become so grossly manipulated and brainwashed by all this BS that they think they're a good journalist for not knowing about the topic. Like, I'm not going to know about that because those people are nuts. I don't want to know anything about that. I don't want to have any association with it. And that's how, like your family's story is a reflection of that. They're modeling that kind of behavior. But how crazy is it after what I told you, like how little a lot of these people know about these topics, and also the pressure to not know about the topics? Like my boss, how could you even pitch that conference? You're a psycho if you even think you want to know about it. Those are the people that your family has decided to tear itself apart over. That I guess if there was like one thing that my podcast does, it would be to just tell families, like, honestly, like, these are not the people
Mhm.
to make long-term decisions about your relationships over. Like, do
Yes.
it if you want to cancel each other or something else, like, fine. You want to throw things at each other over Thanksgiving dinner, fine. But please do not do it because of the information you get from us, because they do not know what they're talking about. Do it for some other reason, but not this.
And like what you said, the journalists that's like they almost think that they should get brownie points for being ignorant about a certain
Yeah.
topic. It's like they must know because it's like if they start looking into it and they start seeing the cracks, it's like it's all in a sense it is better to not know because then you are not knowingly pushing a
Right.
lie. You're just ignorantly pushing a lie.
Yep. Yeah, because then now you're convicted, and like if you don't do anything, now you are a liar. Now you are complicit in what this evil has been over the last few years. I don't know how much you know about addiction, but that was the field I wanted to go into when I was in graduate school, and I worked with heroin addicts in a methadone clinic. And the power for the mind to deceive itself is is very good, very strong. And so that, you may think like, well, those are just drug addicts, but every human has the capacity for self-deception for whatever their drug of choice is. And, that may be politics. It could be something else. But if you're not at least starting every day with the idea that you have the capacity to do terrible things, then you are probably going to do terrible things. One of the main things that will keep you from doing a terrible thing is just knowing that you have the capacity to do it. And if you wake up every day thinking you don't, that's dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is a question I was thinking of before from JGM director. After the NYC employee lawsuit, are more private sector lawsuits coming because of lost jobs and adverse reactions?
I don't know. I have a reporter who covered that case in court coming on Friday. So that would be a good question to ask. I think something that a lot of people got wrong on this story is it only affected the 16 people on the lawsuit. So a lot of folks were like reporting that it was everybody in New York City who was fired over the vaccine mandate gets their job back with back pay, but it wasn't that. It was just the 16 people on the lawsuit that got it. Now, it could set a precedent for the future for other lawsuits, like you're saying, and I think it will. I've considered. I haven't made a decision yet. I've considered suing my old department over like First Amendment violations for what I went through. And so I think all these cases will affect both your ability to speak about it, about these topics as an employee somewhere, especially if you're a public employee, as well as, make your personal health decisions without fear of getting fired. But I think, unfortunately, the way that this has all gone down is like you have to have enough money to sue. It's all been tried in court, and there are so many people out there who can't afford to sue. I think we would be if there were people who could sue. And think about this: you're going up against the government, which uses your tax dollars to fight back.
Oh,
So you're basically paying the government's lawyer fee, and yours. It's a totally unfair fight, but it's the system we have. And I think it's just unfortunate that a lot of this stuff has taken so long to get to this point, and people's lives have been irreparably damaged only because they can't afford an attorney. And the government should be following the law. Like that's the thing that I think I'm bewildered by, is that we have to force the government to follow the law. Like that's some serious bullshit.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, but like, thank God so many of us are paying attention and more people are waking up every day. This is from Fealty. The reporter on the hot mic saying they had everything on Epstein and never reported it is stunning proof of the lack of honest news. Yeah, and also the fear they probably put into reporters who they're doing their job, they're doing journalism. It's like, oh no, but we can't report on that.
Yeah. There's open, like we were talking about a while ago. There's open censorship like that. And then there's just the people who they just know, like your dog knows, not to get cheese off the counter. Like you after a while, you don't have to tell the dog to do that anymore. It just stays away because it knows it's going to get its ass beat. And that's how it is with journalists.
Right. Even though it's like sometimes they do sneak and take the cheese when you're not looking.
But then they're like, you know what? I like this too much. I think I don't want to live here anymore. I'm gonna go live at a dairy farm.
Yeah. From Young Pei Chang, good morning, Tuesday morning. Did you guys catch the Truth Cops piece from The Intercept? I was just looking that up. Oh my goodness.
I don't think I've seen that.
This is a long thing. Okay, so I'm going to read key takeaways. Their DHS shuttered its controversial disinformation governance board. A strategic document reveals the underlying work is ongoing. DHS plans to target inaccurate info on the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic and the efficacy of the COVID jabs, racial justice, U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the nature. I'm just going to share this because it's easier to follow along.
They have this new the disinformation governance board went away, but there's a new public-private partnership, as they like to call them. It's like the Council for Social Media Responsibility, which no one's talking about. And it was created right after that. And it's basically DHS, CIA, NSA, along with mainstream journalists in quotes, and some other people, big the Facebook whistleblower, which also goes in quotes because she blew the whistle on something that everybody wanted her to say, which I'm not really quite sure how that's whistleblowing. But so they're behind the scenes doing, well, not even behind the scenes, it's out there.
That's not a whistleblower so much as just like a marching band. It's like, no, this is planned.
Yeah, when you're saying something that the government and the media already believes, that's marching band. That's right. That's probably the best way to say it. So they just had their first meeting a couple weeks ago, and they're going to be pressuring. They've if you go look for it, I think it's like Council One is the organization behind it, or Issue One. Issue One is the organization behind it, and they've put all these government officials with big tech people and former national security, DoD folks. And they're saying they're going to publicly pressure social media platforms to go after misinformation. And it is the Disinformation Governance Board, just in a new and what's the word I'm looking for? Just a new form. And actually will probably be less
the Ministry of Truth, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And then this time, because it's not the government running it, it's this like private nonprofit. You're going to have much less access to public records requests for what they're working on, because these people are not all in the government. It's not a government organization. I mean, it basically is in all intents and purposes, but it's not paid government people. It's like former CIA directors, former DoD officials. All these people are former. So now when they email each other about getting you off YouTube, you're not going to be able to see it because they're private individuals. It's worse than the Disinformation Governance Board, but no one's talking about it.
Like, I'm a former diving coach. I could still teach you to do a 2.5. Like, I could still tell you what to do. I mean, maybe not.
Right. That's pretty cool, diving.
Maybe not you, Allison. No, I could definitely teach you to throw a couple. There's a couple easy ones.
I'd be scared.
So part of this, and also Facebook created a special portal for DHS and government parties to report disinformation directly. So this sounds like rebranding of Department of Truth. Woo!
I kind of wonder if they're talking about, do they say anything about the Council for Social Media Responsibility in there? I'm sure they're connected.
It's called announcing new Disinformation Governance Board. Behind closed doors and through pressure on private platforms, the U.S. government has used its power to try and shape online discourse, according to meeting minutes and other records appended to a lawsuit filed by Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, a Republican who's running for Senate. Discussions have ranged from the scale and the scope of government intervention in its online discourse to the mechanics of streamlining takedown requests for false or intentionally misleading information. Yeah. Platforms have to get comfortable with government. It's really interesting how hesitant they remain. Microsoft executive Matt Masterson, a former DHS official, texted Jen.
See, they just go between DHS and Microsoft. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah. Texted Jen Easterly, a DHS director, in February. Attains Laura Demla, right, an FBI official.
It's always about democracy, too. So, like, threat of subversive information on social media undermine support for the U.S. government. That's what they don't like. They don't like that you don't trust them anymore. They're very scared that you don't think they're here to help you and have your best interest at heart and here to save you. And so they need to force you to trust. Imagine if your parent was like, you're like, I don't trust you because you beat the crap out of me and you feed me rat poison every day for dinner. And you're like, you will, you just change the label on the rat poison. You're like, you will believe this is ham. I mean, that's literally what they're doing. It's so crazy to me.
Wow. Right. Dem Lau, according to notes of the discussion attended by senior executives from Twitter and JP Morgan Chase, stressed that we need a media infrastructure that is held accountable. This is this is mafia shit.
Right? They don't hold the mainstream news accountable for anything.
Right. Just the people who are free thinkers. They need to be held accountable. We do not coordinate with other entities when making content moderation decisions, and we independently evaluate content in line with the Twitter rules, a spokesperson from Twitter wrote. But then, God, didn't Elon just liquidate the whole, or I don't know, dissolve the whole board?
We'll see. We'll see what happens. Chrissy, my live stream, I think my guest might already be in the studio.
Okay. I have to have you back. I'm obsessed with you. I'm in love. Allison, where can people follow you very quickly before you scram?
I think the best place, if you guys know locals, is go to alisonmorrow.locals.com, because I do a lot of exclusive content there and that's where I take story ideas from people, and then you get to put questions in for interviews ahead of time. So when I bring on these censored people, I try to reformat like the news business that I used to be in, so that it was like, the people could go direct and I'm just there to ask your question. So Alison with 1L, morrow.locals.com. I am on all the other platforms. You go to YouTube and find the links, Rockfin, Rumble, Odyssey, but that's the best place. And I really appreciate it, Chrissy. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
Yes, you're the best. Please come back. Everyone loves you. Okay. We'll talk to
Should
you
I
soon.
go, or are you keeping yourself
I'll boot.
on live?
I'm gonna keep going a little bit.
Okay.
I have a couple
I'll
more
keep going.
chats to go, so I'm gonna boot you out.
Okay.
All right. We'll see you
Bye.
soon,
Thank
Allison.
you.
Love you. Bye. Oh my God, this article. Wow. I want to read through this a little bit more because this is juicy. This is juicy smollett, this article. There's also a formalized process for government officials to directly flag content on Facebook or Instagram and request that it be throttled or suppressed through a special Facebook portal that requires a government or law enforcement email to use. So anybody who's a government official can censor your Facebook or Instagram content. At the time of writing, the content request system at Facebook is still live. DHS and Meta, the parent company of Facebook, did not respond to a request for comment. Shocking. The FBI declined to comment. HS's mission to fight disinformation stemming from concerns around Russian influence and the 2016 presidential election began taking shape during the 2020 election and over efforts to shape discussions around jab policy during the Rona. Documents collected by The Intercept from a variety of sources, including current officials and publicly available reports, reveal the evolution of more active measures by DHS. According to a draft copy of DHS's quadrennial Homeland Security Review, DHS capstone report outlining the department's strategy and priorities in the coming years, the department plans to target inaccurate information on a wide range of topics, including, surprise, COVID, the pandemic, how efficient the jabs are or aren't, racial justice, U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the nature of U.S. to support Ukraine. Oh, so all the things they've been lying to us about it. Got it. Let's cover that up real quick. The challenge is particularly acute in marginalized communities. The report says, which are often the targets of false information or misleading information, such as false information on voting procedures targeting people of color. This is such bullshit. This is such bullshit. This is more of that BLM bullshit. Like they're using this idea of like you're special to manipulate people. If you tell a group of people that they are falsely targeted because of their skin color, you immediately have their attention. If you tell people because of your status in this victim group, you are more of a target of this thing, then it's you have them because you've baited them in by basically kind of like making them feel special. And you're like, we're going to recognize you. And so now come with us, right? This is bullshit. The inclusion of the 2021 U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Oh, another thing people are very angry about, and it was a big fuck up, is particularly noteworthy, given that House Republicans should take the majority in the midterms have vowed to investigate. This makes Benghazi look like a much smaller issue, said Republican Mike Johnson, a member of the Armed Services Committee, adding that finding answers will be a top priority. How disinformation is defined by the government has not been clearly articulated, and the inherently subjective nature of what constitutes disinformation provides a broad opening for DHS officials to make politically motivated determinations about what constitutes dangerous speech. DHS justifies these goals, which have expanded far beyond its original purview on foreign threats to encompass disinformation originating domestically, by claiming that terrorist threats can be, quote, exacerbated by misinformation and disinformation spread online. Oh, so they want to just control all the information. Why do you want to control the information? Because if yours is the truth, right? Isn't the answer to bad speech more speech and then let the people sort it out for themselves? But if you just call information that you don't want people to know disinformation, well, then maybe they'll ignore it. But the laudable goal of protecting Americans from danger it's always about protecting us from danger, has often been used to conceal political maneuvering. In 2004, for instance, DHS officials faced pressure from the Bush administration to heighten the national threat level for terrorism in a bid to influence voters prior to the election. U.S. officials have routinely lied about an array of issues, from the causes of its war in Vietnam and Iraq to their more recent what a great SAT word, obfuscation, around the role of the National Institutes of Health in funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology Research. Yes, these are interesting topics. They're probably ramping this up because a lot of interesting truths are coming out about all these topics, and they want to get a handle on that really quickly. That track record has not prevented the U.S. government from seeking to become arbiters of what constitutes false or dangerous information on inherently. Right, because why wouldn't the group that is lying so much to its people want to control the information? They want to get back, or, I mean, they've lost so many of our trust. It may be impossible what they're trying to do, but they're going to try. Earlier this year, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signed a law known by supporters as the Stop Woke Act, which bans private employers from workplace. Wow, I didn't hear about this. Which bans workplace private employers from workplace training sessions. Training asserting an individual's moral character is privileged or oppressed based on their race, color, sex, or national origin. What a good idea. Everyone's equal? What? The law, critics charged, amounted to a broad suppression of speech deemed offensive. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, or FIRE, has since filed a lawsuit against DeSantis, alleging unconstitutional censorship. A federal judge temporarily blocked parts of the Stop Woke Act, ruling that the law had violated his workers' First Amendment rights. Oh, okay. So it's okay for the government to violate First Amendment rights, but they can just deem anything they don't like a violation of their First Amendment rights. Got it. Florida legislators may well find plaintiff speech repugnant, but under our constitutional scheme, the remedy for repugnant speech is more speech, not enforced silence. Yes. So many of us are saying this. Wow. Government flagged numerous suspicious posts during the election, which were taken down. Yeah. I mean, this is all stuff we know. Just to the extent of flagging posts and taking things down, removing, labeling, or soft blocking speech. All of this done in consultation with the CISA, the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency. It's all the government. Wow. And this is something that Zuckerberg mentioned, right? Prior to the 2020 election, tech companies like Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Discord, Wikipedia, Microsoft, LinkedIn, and Verizon Media met on a monthly basis with the FBI, CISA, and other government representatives. Monthly. According to NBC News, the meetings were part of an initiative still ongoing between the private sector and the government to discuss how firms would handle misinformation during the election. So they're working together. Wow. Stepped up counter disinformation effort by in 2018 following high-profile hacking of U.S. firms. Okay, this is long. I was not prepared for how long this article was. I can keep reading it. I'm just going to go read some of these chats because I missed a couple. Kyle Klukin, good times. Don't see your stream on Rumble. Yeah, this stream was set up before I got struck on YouTube. So this was before I had a Rumble account, but I have one now. I'm going to make sure I add it to everything. But Kyle, it was good to meet you this weekend. Good to see you at the Orlando Improv Show. What's up, Big Raj? I met Big Raj this weekend too. Thank you for the super sticker. Tits and ray guns. What's a French manicure? You start the manicure but surrender halfway through. That's fucking funny, man. Good Elsa Barrett, sorry, there's too much going on in Allison's background. Very distracting. Seriously, though, have you considered putting up a nice poster or perhaps a Hunter Biden doll? Aw, yeah, we were talking about that before we went live. Her plain background. Maybe I can help her with it. John Thomas for 5. When you act at the behest and for the benefit of the state, you are an agent of the state. Case law is clear on this. Preach. Vernon Copeland, you're going to get struck again by DOD. Ronald Reagan said the worst thing you can hear from the government is I'm here to help. I wouldn't be surprised because all I did for the last one was play a video that literally everybody was playing. Matthew Hammond, we need Allison and Ivory Hecker on the podcast together to talk about newsrooms and see how their lives, how their experiences compare. That's a great idea. I've heard of Ivory Hecker. I think she was on Timcast. I've written it down, Matthew. Mark Wilkins. Oh, wow. Thanks to 50. They've been playing this game of government actors, but not the government shutting people down on social media. I remember from my con law professor in law school that allows parties to name government actors' actions as government action. I met you in Orlando. Oh, well, I don't remember your face because it's not on your avatar, but it was good to meet you too. Wow. This is crazy, but I'm not surprised about it. Oh, key takeaways continued. Where was this before? Okay. The work is primarily done by CISA, a DHS sub-agency tasked with protecting critical national infrastructure. Sub-agency. Ooh. Just like YouTube and CNN are sub-agencies. DHS, the FBI, and several media entities are having bi-weekly meetings as recently as August. Oh, yeah. They're getting ready for this election. DHS considered countering disinformation relating to content that undermines trust in financial systems and courts. The FBI agent who primed social media platforms to take down the Hunter Biden laptop story continued to have a role in DHS policy discussions. Wow. All right. So it's ongoing. They just had to rebrand, right? So way more people have control over censorship than we first knew. That's basically my takeaway of this article. We'll see what happens. Interesting stuff, though. What's up, Spectral Citizen? Love Content House. Congrats on hitting over 100K followers on Twitter. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I did. I was not expecting to hit that until like after Christmas. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I love Alison Morrow. She's a delight. I can't wait to have her back. She had to run though. From Deranged Lunatic. CM, if you get a PO box, people might send CM, if you get a PO box, people might send you stuff. I have to get a PO box. You're right. You're right. Okay. Wow, there's so much to talk about still from the weekend. You know what we're gonna do? You know what we should do is a Content House recap stream. Maybe we could do that later tonight or maybe tomorrow. But yeah, Cumia is definitely going to be talking about it on the Anthony Cumia show today at 4:00 on Compound Media. Check it out. I was not able to get back in time to do the Wet Spot last night, which is my show that's usually Mondays at 7:00 on Compound. But I had my buddies, whatever Amy and Andrew Harms, co-host for me, and Zia Anderson was on. Drunk Jimmy was on. So check it out. And yeah, just send all your packages to Chrissy's work. The more boxes, the better. And we should do, a recap in the Discord. I feel like I am so behind. Kumia just didn't do a show yesterday. He just wasn't like up for it. We were gonna record one. We were planning to record one on Sunday for him, but his voice was gone. He was tired. He was tapped out. So yeah, man, it was fun. I am very proud of us. I'm very proud of what like just a few of us were able to accomplish. Like honestly, like this is not it's not the most professional situation. It's just like literally me and Frank, and then we like got a couple of our friends on board who have technical knowledge and who like help me with this YouTube or help with compound media, and that's really it. So like we're still working on it. This is only the second one we've ever done. It's just going to get better and better. So I welcome the notes. I welcome the suggestions from people. So yeah, we're just going to have to like maybe buy more equipment, do it again. We're already thinking about where next to do it. But there are a lot of moving pieces. It was very stressful getting that strike right before getting on the plane. So I'm so grateful to Compound Media that they let us use their YouTube channel to stream on, and that we were able to get set up on Rumble so quick. So yeah, I have Nick Ricada to thanks for that because he connected me with like the head of content over on Rumble, and they like got me up and running. And basically through like we arrived at Cracker Barrel to have lunch. I was like on the call with the guy, and then by the time we left, I was like pretty much set up. So I gotta make sure that we stream to Rumble every single time now, because Rumble had more viewers than YouTube. Rumble's crushing it. I was really surprised to see. I was not expecting there to be more Rumblies than YouTube viewers. So it was really fun. What else do we have going on today? At 6 p.m. today, this is something kind of new and different that I'm going to be doing. At 6 p.m. today, tune back in on this channel, and I will also make sure to be streaming on Rumble as well. I will be moderating what's called the New York Governor's Write-In Debate of 2022. I will be co-moderating it with Peter Lavania, and Larry Sharp will be on it. And Larry Sharp is, if you've been watching this channel, you might know him. He's the Libertarian Party candidate. And Howie Hawkins, who's the Green Party candidate. Howie is very lefty, and Larry's very libertarian. So they will be doing a governor's debate as they are both write-in candidates. So it'll be interesting to kind of hear from like two very different sides. So tune back in at 6 o'clock for that. Larry Sharp is just a great guy. Very smart. And my God, I can't believe everything's been such a blur. I can't believe the election is like almost here. My birthday's almost here. There's so much happening, so much going on. 6 p.m. Eastern. Yes. 6 p.m. Eastern back on this channel, but we'll also be streaming to like, all the usual places too, plus Rumble. So, yeah, I'm going to wrap this episode up. Thank you so much to Alison Morrow for joining. I have so many more questions for her about her time working in mainstream news. Thank you to the chat. One more comment from Matthew Hammond. Do we need to move our membership over to Rumble or keep it on YouTube? I mean, guys, do what you want to do. I would encourage everybody to also create a profile on Rumble so that it's there and you can start following the people that you already like. That way, I think if more and more people that you like get banned permanently from YouTube, then like it would make sense to go where they go, right? So if it's not too much of a pain in the butt, yeah, make a profile on YouTube. I mean, on Rumble. And yeah, I know it's probably annoying being like on multiple platforms. I'm still figuring it out myself, to be honest. Like, it's overwhelming. But we will see you back here at 6 o'clock. Appreciate you guys.